My dad ruined my life. Story time. So I met my guy best friend, who we'll call Steve, when I was about 9 years old. I was a little bit of a tomboy and he was so sweet and shy. So it did seem like a bit of an unlikely pairing, but we became inseparable. All the adults in our town would be like, "Ooh, when's the wedding gonna happen?" And me and Steve would just awkwardly roll our eyes. We were literally like brother and sister. I have never trusted anyone in my life the way I've trusted Steve. I genuinely cannot put it into words how incredible this boy was. So, long story short, when we turned 16, the whole friendship thing kind of fell away. As soon as we turned 16, me and Steve started to date. And I started operating on the assumption that we would be spending the rest of our lives together. I could just see myself having a nice little job, 5 kids, a big garden. I was so happy, but then a year later, when I was 17, Steve just dumped me out of nowhere. I had to find out through a friend that he had run off and joined the Navy. I was absolutely heartbroken. And the part I was struggling with the most is that I had no clue why he'd left me. My parents were literally my saving grace during this time. They were so supportive and helpful. They encouraged me to just throw myself into my studies, and because of this, I got into this really good school. But I came away from this situation absolutely stunned. If I couldn't trust Steve, who was I supposed to trust? It literally felt like everything I'd ever known had been a lie. So let's fast forward a few years. I'm now 3 failed relationships in, and at this point, I'm feeling a little bit insecure and worse for wear. And to top it all off, my dad recently passed away. So one day, I'm driving to work and my phone lights up with an unknown number. And guess who's on the end of the phone? It's Steve. And he says, "Look, you would be 100% justified to just hang up the phone right now." He goes on to say, "But I heard your dad died and I never got to clear things with him." And I'm thinking him and my dad never had beef, so I'm not really too sure what that was about. He said, "But you deserve to know the truth." Do you know how scary that is? Having some person that you've not spoken to for years call you and then tell you that. Steve then goes on to say that when we were younger, my dad came to him. My dad said that I was amazing and special and I deserved a bigger life than what I had. I deserved more than just being some random person's wife and to just have their babies. He also told Steve that if we did get together, I'd realise one day that I was better and I deserved more and I'd leave him eventually. So, without consulting me in this whole situation, these 2 men decided what was best for me. I cannot begin to tell you the amount of emotions that went through my body at that time. Now, I came to forgive Steve over time. He's married with 3 kids now, and they have a big garden. We've both admitted that we're still in love with each other, but are too ethical to do anything about it. I guess it's kind of the perfect tragic love story. Okay, my thoughts on this. This is heartbreaking. What the dad did, I know why he did it, but that was very wrong. The relationship may not have worked out, but it would have been nice to let it play its course, would it not, father? All she wanted was a big garden and her kids and Steve, and you took it from her. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Am I the arsehole for telling my brother the real reason why my mum wants nothing to do with him? So when I was 16, my mum and dad got divorced. We found out that my dad had been cheating on my mum. And it only came to light because his mistress, who's now my stepmom, fell pregnant. And she made my dad choose between my mum and her. So 9 months and 1 divorce later, my brother, who we'll call, plot twist, Dave, was born. And needless to say, my mum is not the biggest fan of Dave. She doesn't hate him, don't get me wrong, but she doesn't love him or want any type of relationship with him either. Whenever she picks me up from my dad's house and Dave is out the front, she always just ignores him. She never initiates any conversation or makes eye contact with him. And if he does try to make a conversation, my mum will always give short answers and just get us on our way. So my dad and stepmom have sheltered Dave from the past family drama all his life. He has no clue. I've always been really frustrated by this because I know everyone else should know and it's really hard to keep it from him sometimes. And I think it's really hard for Dave because he just thinks that this grown-ass woman just doesn't like him for no reason. Dave kind of just thinks it's because my mum hates my dad, which you know is kind of true. In his words, he just says that my mum is a resentful old hag who can't get over the past. He really is the most charming young boy. But you know what? He is kind of right. Before any of you say that my mum is lying about my dad's affair, he has literally admitted to the whole entire thing. He's never denied any of it or kept anything from me. He's always been quite open and honest. So anyway, on to the inciting incident. My mum was planning a vacation and of course I was invited. And on this family holiday, she also invited my paternal uncle, so my dad's brother. He had taken my mum's side when everything was kicking off with the affair back in the day, and they've stayed pretty close since, so. Dave actually ended up finding out that his cousins had been invited on the trip and not him, and really awkwardly he came to me and asked me why my mum hates him so much. He was so upset, he broke down crying. The 16-year-old boy broke into tears. And it was at this point I decided enough's enough, he deserves to know the truth. I tried to break it as gently as I could. But you know, there's really no way to tell a crying kid that they're a result of a cheating scandal and that's why my mum hates him. The good side of it all though was that he wasn't crying anymore and he wasn't mad at my mum. The bad side though was that he's now really pissed off at his parents. So anyway, I had to leave for the vacation. and my dad and stepmom have been blowing up my phone whilst I've been away. They are furious at me for telling him before he was ready. So I told my mum what had happened, and she told me that it was a bit of a dick move because I kind of just dropped the bomb and left them to deal with it. And to be fair, Dave isn't exactly the most emotionally mature 16-year-old ever. So now I'm thinking I might have undermined my dad and stepmom's parenting. And maybe I should have waited till after the holiday to tell him so I could have helped out clear the mess. Because I did kind of just mic drop and leave. So what do you think? My 19-year-old sister is marrying her high school teacher. Story time. So my sister is 19 and she is marrying her 36-year-old high school teacher. And this is all happening in a few days' time, and everyone around me just seems to be okay with it. So for some context, she graduated about a year ago and they told us they were dating almost immediately after she graduated. And I tell you, I was shooketh to the core. I was looking around me thinking surely everyone else is losing it. But no. Everyone was so supportive and seemed so happy for them. The teacher, who we'll call Steve obviously, divorced his wife about a year ago. And after that, he started to pay attention to my sister, who we'll call Amy. He would speak to her after class, he'd pay special attention to her studies. And I thought this was weird. So I thought I'll do my role as a big sister and I'll talk to her about this. And she told me that he was only doing this because she was the best student in his class. Yeah, I bet you were. So only a few months into dating, they announced that they were in fact engaged. So I thought, well, if Amy's not going to listen to me about how weird it is, I'll go to my parents. I was like, hello, parents. Do you not think this age difference is a little bit strange? They didn't want to hear it. So at that point, I resorted back to plan A and went back to speak to Amy about it. And she just said that she is so happy and that she's really in love with him. We live in this really small town, right? And everyone in the community is supporting this marriage. We live in this tight little community, right? And everybody in this town is supporting this marriage. Here is the update. The marriage has happened, people. I contemplated not going to the ceremony. I really did not want to go, but I didn't want to upset my little sister, so reluctantly I went. And my blood was boiling throughout the whole entire thing. Everyone was so congratulatory of them, they were all making a fuss, and I couldn't even look Steve in the face. I was so angry. So I've now decided that I need to get out of this town. I managed to get some job interviews out of town lined up, so I'm heading out the city tomorrow. I spoke to my parents about it yet again, and they just said that my sister getting married to a man with a stable career and a good job is the best thing that could have ever happened to her. And I just don't understand how everyone around them can't see that he is taking the mick out of my little sister. I told my sister that even though I'm going to be out of town, she can contact me under any circumstances whenever she might need me. So I even bought her a phone so that she could speak to me regularly because she didn't have one. My sister always had the biggest dreams to go on to be someone special who'd make the biggest difference in the world, but now this man is literally forcing her to be a housewife. I'm hoping that one day she'll wake up and realise what's happened, and I'm going to be there to support her when that day comes. And just for some more context, this is a man that has taught my sister since she was 16. So what do you think? This is by far the best revenge story I have ever heard. Story time. So my aunt ended up going to her ex-boyfriend's wedding. So my aunt is the disappointment of my mum's side of the family. Even my parents tell me not to become like her. Even my grandma hates her. And you know what that means? She is the exact type of woman I want to be when I grow up. My aunt, who we'll call Amy, is in her mid-30s now, and she's got loads of tattoos, piercings. She's always got different coloured hair. She plays the drums and she works as a bartender. So here's the kicker. So last year, after a really bad mentee bee, I begged my dad to take me to my aunt's house. I just needed my cool aunt in my life. I had just dropped out of my final exam and I was in pretty bad condition, not gonna lie. And that is when Auntie Amy told me this story. So at the time, she was dating this guy who we will call Steve. And Steve was the one. She dreamt of spending her whole life with Steve. That was until she found out that Steve was getting a little bit cozy with Susan from accounts by the photocopier, if you know what I mean. Not judging at all, Steve. And if you thought that was scandalous enough, my aunt one day gets a knock at the door. Guess who it is? It's Susan from accounts. And dear Susan is here to deliver a wedding invitation. And do you know what? It was a bold move. I admire the bravery. And that wasn't the only news she was delivering, nay. She also dropped the bombshell that Susan was pregnant. Now, this is when Amy pulled the Uno reverse card. And my aunt excitedly turned round to Susan and said, "Oh, that's quite interesting actually, Susan, because Steve's infertile." So before they split up, Amy and Steve were trying to have a baby together and they were struggling, and then they ended up breaking up. But before they did, they went to see a doctor about why they were struggling to have a baby. And the result of this ended up getting posted to Auntie Amy's house after they broke up, and it turns out that Steve was infertile. And Steve never found out this information. Poor Steve is about to have 2 bombshells dropped on him. Okay, let's come forward in time again. Auntie Amy very cordially accepts the invite to the wedding, and she goes to speak to Steve's brother, who she was still quite close friends with, and she encourages him to play a part in her revenge. So at the wedding, there is a little section called Take a Walk Down Memory Lane. So it was basically just pictures of the couple from over the years. So after a few cute pictures of the couple, a picture of Susan kissing another man pops up, then another, and then another. Just as the bride Susan starts losing her shit, up pops Steve's infertility test results. And boy, was everybody here for the drama. Steve obviously looked utterly humiliated, and Susan began bawling her eyes out. This is what you get for messing with a woman's true feelings. Okay, so a couple of you asked for my opinions on these stories. Now, although I think this is absolutely exceptional revenge, and yes, Steve did cheat on her, could we not have revealed this at like a different time? I absolutely love the brother as well. Like, of course he wants to get involved in the drama. He must absolutely hate the bride for wanting to get involved in his own brother's demise. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. He will live to regret cheating on me. Story time. So I was with this boy for 2 years before he cheated on me at a party. He had gone to this party with all of his guy mates, and I decided to stay at home and study. I'd like to think that I'm quite a trusting, non-controlling type of girlfriend. So I have no issues with him going out with his boys. Thankfully, a girl in my class was at the same party that my boyfriend was at. And at like 1:30 in the morning, she sends me a video of my boyfriend dancing with this other girl. Then the video just progressively gets so much worse. He starts kissing her, and then she starts to lead him away. Bless, this girl was so apologetic. She kept apologising for not stepping in and stopping him. I just kept saying that this is his true colours coming out, so there was no way of stopping him. I was collecting receipts. The next morning rolls round and he comes over to my dorm. He's a little bit more lovey-dovey than he normally is. But I was not holding back. I confronted him about what had happened the night before. And I tried to give him the chance to tell me the truth. I tried hinting that, oh, but like my friend from class saw you there, like how was the night? And still, he gave me nothing, so I whipped out the big guns. And I have never seen anyone dive off the deep end with excuses quicker than this boy. He was saying, oh, it was just a mistake, I was drunk, I didn't do anything with her, I just kissed her. I was having absolutely none of it. So at that point, I took myself over to his dorm and I took back everything that I'd left there, everything he'd given me. And whilst I was bagging up my stuff, he was begging me not to leave. So once I returned home, that is when I started planning my revenge. So he comes from a really religious family. So much so that relations before marriage is off the cards. Containing any sort of substance is a no-no. And he heavily relied on his parents to pay for his college, any spending money he needs. And he didn't have a job, so he was reliant on them for money. So I started to compile some pictures of my boyfriend together. There is pictures of him smoking with his friends, a video of us doing shots in New York, him chugging a beer whilst playing beer pong, and then for the grand finale I finished with the video of him cheating on me. I then sent a copy of this video to his parent, to his auntie, and then just about anyone else who held authority over him in his family. The results came in quick and they were immaculate. Literally that day he was pulled from university and he was forced back home under a state of house arrest. And he was only allowed to leave the house to go to his community college classes that he'd enrolled in. And he just completely lost the ability to have any form of fun whilst at college. I know this because one of his old guy mates actually angrily messaged me. He said how it was my fault that I ruined their plans to get an apartment next year. I mean, to this day, I have absolutely no regrets. It was so easy, he just should never have lied. And that is why cheaters should be shown absolutely no mercy. Am I the arsehole for telling my brother-in-law the truth about my sister? So I have a sister and we'll call her Amy. And I found out recently that her boyfriend Steve wants to propose. Me and my sister have always had such a close relationship. But there is just this one thing that I think people should know because it might change their opinion of her. Amy is a diagnosed sociopath. When we were younger, she started to showcase these disturbing behaviours. And after a little incident towards me, my parents decided to go get some help. Throughout all her time at school, she got in so much trouble. She'd be getting told off for lying, being cruel to other students. So as she grew up, she got a lot of therapy and now she is doing so well. She received an official diagnosis at 18, but we had all suspected it for so much longer. She's got a really good job now, amazing friends, she lives a really, really positive life. And oh my god, Amy gets male attention. Amy uses the dating guide like it's the bloody Bible. She just has this way of keeping people obsessed with her. So let's take it back to Steve. Her and Steve have been together for almost a year and a half now. And Steve is literally crazy about her. He is such a nice guy. He has a really strong relationship with me and the rest of our family as well, which is so nice. Steve is super kind and intelligent, but I just have this doubt that Amy doesn't actually love him. In the past, you know how sisters are, me and Amy would always talk about boys. And she's been very open about the fact that she doesn't feel love or empathy for literally anybody. She even admitted that when one of her best friends died, she didn't even get upset. She just kind of put it on to make it seem like it was all real. And in her words, she felt pretty neutral about it. She's also stated that she literally doesn't feel guilt about anything she has ever done in the past, and Amy has done some pretty bad things. She has said, in truth, and I believe her many times before, that she really does love spending time around Steve, and she does find him attractive. But like I say, I really doubt that she actually feels anything for him. So like I say, Steve wants to propose soon, and he has no idea about any of this. And she's also been very honest about the fact that she has no intentions of telling Steve about her diagnosis either. I mean, I do get it. She is just very scared that Steve will get scared away. But I really believe that she needs to tell him the truth before they get married. I told her, either you're going to tell him, Amy, or I'm going to tell him, because he deserves to know. And she keeps responding, I know you wouldn't dare tell him. And I would. I really respect this man. And Steve definitely loves her enough to keep this relationship going with this piece of knowledge. It's just his decision to make, but he deserves all of the facts. Okay, my thoughts. He 100% deserves to know. Even if it's just because if something happens in the future and she maybe needs support. What do you guys think? Am I the arsehole for refusing to forgive my cousin after she got with my boyfriend? So I've been with my boyfriend since May 2019. So when everything started to lock down, my parents offered for my cousin to come and stay with us. We'll call my cousin Amy. Amy is immunocompromised and her parents work in a hospital, so it made sense for her to come and live with us. And everything was so fine for a short while. So a few weeks into her living there, I was on FaceTime in the kitchen to my boyfriend, who we'll call Steve. Normally I'd just do this in my room, but my dad was on a work call in the room next to me and I didn't want to make too much noise. Amy came in and she glanced over my shoulder and had a look. Once the call ended, she asked who he was. I told her it was my boyfriend and she was like, oh, he's cute. At the time, it just felt like a random comment and it didn't feel like it was going to be a big deal. But after that, anytime I was on a call, whether it be with my friends or my boyfriend, she would try to come into my bedroom. She kept trying to play it off as just wanting to come in and ask me a question, but it was happening a little bit too often. And I would just look at her like, as if like, get out, and she would be like, don't I get to say hi? Which I found really, really odd. And might add, she did not know these people. We went to different schools and she'd never shown any interest in them before. And there was even times when if my phone rang in the room and she was looking over at it, she'd be like, oh, is that the cute boyfriend? And if that's not bad enough, she started to make comments saying that she'd wish she'd have met him first. I asked her to stop because it was very clearly making me uncomfortable. But it continued to get worse. She ended up finding him on Instagram and started sending him all of these flirty, inappropriate messages. He then blocked her and she made a second account to try and message him again. So again, he blocked her. She then went into my room when I was in the shower and got into my phone, found his number and started texting and calling him. He obviously wouldn't answer, so she'd leave him voicemails about how good of a girlfriend she would be for him. She would say how he should leave me and how much she would do for him as his girlfriend. When she wasn't getting a response, she sent him pictures. So at this point I was like, right, nothing's working, I'm bringing in the big guns. I decided to tell my parents and they made her leave. I have not spoken to her since then. And now my extended family are trying to create a little meetup in summertime. I am refusing to go to anything she's at. They say I'm just ruining plans now to be spiteful because she did end up apologising, but it was literally the most half-assed apology you've ever seen. I do feel like a little bit of an arsehole because it means that we can't have any family plans now. And I feel like I'm essentially making our family choose between the two of us. But I don't want to be around her if she's going to keep making me feel uncomfortable. Okay, here are my thoughts. It's very clear that the cousin is a weirdo. And I would feel the exact same way if somebody was like that around my boyfriend. I feel like, however, you could defo give going to a family event a go and just try and keep your distance from her. Sounds like the whole family know that there's a bit of a situation, so they're not going to try and force anything. But what do you think? Am I the arsehole for leaving my surprise wedding because I felt blindsided? For last week, I was invited to a fancy dress party by my long-term boyfriend, Steve. For some context, we had discussed getting married before, but no plans of an immediate wedding. So as I entered this grand hall, I was shocked. The doors opened and down either side of this big aisle were all my family and friends, acquaintances, all looking super excited. And it became very clear, very fast, that Steve had orchestrated a surprise wedding. Everyone erupted in this massive applause and I just stood there so overwhelmed. I just wanted to cry. Don't get me wrong, I love Steve with my whole entire heart. I dreamed of our future together, but a surprise wedding with no prior warning or consent was quite alarming to me. So I decided to pull Steve over just to express my concerns. I said how I would have absolutely loved a role in the decision making, planning my own wedding, and also a chance to emotionally prepare myself for such a big day in my life. But Steve just dismissed these concerns and said that it was just a big romantic gesture and he thought I would have loved it. And at that point, I felt like I was forced with a really difficult decision. Do I go along with this, just put a smile on, even though I feel a little bit uncomfortable and unsettled? Or do I just stand up to my autonomy and face my true feelings? But in the end, I knew that I couldn't go through with it and I decided to leave the surprise wedding, much to many of the guests' disappointment and confusion. So now I'm finding myself at odds with Steve and my family. Even some of my friends have told me that I ruined such a magical, spontaneous moment. But I 100% believe that marriage should be a joint decision, with open communication and shared expectations of it. Everyone keeps saying, oh, they're so confused because I've always spoken about marrying Steve. But like I say, the problem isn't marrying him, the problem is the surprise wedding. It's the fact that I didn't get a single say in how any of the wedding went, how it looked, what I wore, how I felt, how my hair was. Steve's reasoning for doing this was that I'd always said it must be so stressful planning a wedding, so he decided to do it all himself so I wouldn't have to deal with any of that. Like, yes, it's stressful, but I still would have liked the opportunity to plan one. So now everybody keeps asking if me and Steve are going to finish. And I keep replying, absolutely not. I still very much want to marry Steve. And what's making me feel even worse is that I wasted a perfectly good wedding. Okay, time for my thoughts. I completely 100% get where this girl is coming from. As someone who really wants to get married, I can imagine how upsetting it would be not to get to plan your own wedding. But I also get Steve's side, and I think it's so lovely that he planned a full wedding so she didn't have to deal with the stress. Let me know what you guys think. I've been keeping a secret from my friend about her husband. Story time. So I was out the other day and I ended up meeting my friend's husband, who we'll call Steve. He told me not to tell anyone this story, that it's a massive secret. Steve has 3 kids and is literally always exhausted. So one day on his way into work, a woman that he always sees on the train struck up a conversation with him. She said she just knew it as the tired guy because he always looked exhausted, which I feel like is low-key kind of rude. So he began to explain why he was always so tired and always asleep on the train. She explained that she was a hotel manager and she could get him a room for free. So immediately, Steve takes her up on this offer, which, if you ask me, that's a little bit fishy. That just sounds like an affair, right? But no, Steve actually has an ongoing deal with this woman. He said that he just gets a call every now and again when there's a room free and she hooks him up. He tells his wife that he's visiting family, but actually all he goes and does is sleeps in this hotel room. He's away from his wife and kids and he is peaceful. So I was like, babe, you can't be telling me this and not your wife. I said, keeping this a secret from her, if she finds out anything, she's just gonna assume the worst. And when he told her the truth, she replied, I believe you, you'd never cheat on me. And he was like, oh, why do you know that? And she said, because Steve, you have no game. Am I the arsehole for being upset that my husband refuses to be at my birth? So he told me a couple of weeks ago he's refusing to take time off work to be at our first child's birth. Our baby is due sometime this month and he's been picking up extra shifts so we have a little bit of extra cash. I was getting concerned that these shifts were not slowing down, he was only just taking more work on. So when he came home from work yesterday, I asked him when he was going to start taking the time off work. And he told me that he couldn't actually take time off work right now because there was this huge project coming up. So for some context, his boss is married to one of my friend's brothers. And I was like, well, I'm going to utilise my connections here. I decided that I was going to call his boss and see what the crack was. So I made the phone call and his boss told me that he had told him he could have as much time off as he needed with pay. And I was like, oh, that's strange because he told me that this big project is happening and so he can't have any time off. And the manager was like, no, not on that project at all, but he has been asking for even more work. My husband then got really upset with me. He told me it was disrespectful that I'd called his boss and that it was so wrong of me to overrule his decision to take on more work and not have time off. So I apologised about calling his boss because, to be fair, I kind of did feel bad. But I was still so mad and I was so confused as to why he'd lie. He went on to say that he just wanted to have extra money so that we could have it for when the baby's here after the birth. And this is the kicker line. Buckle in, everybody. He said, I really don't know why you're getting so mad. The baby's not even going to remember me being there. So, naturally, I just burst into tears. And he was like, I'll make it right. I'll try to be there if I can. but he absolutely could be there. He's getting the time off work. So this was a few weeks ago, fast forward to this morning. I wake up to find my husband getting ready for work. I said, what are you doing? The baby is going to be here anytime soon. What are you going to do? He told me that my mum would be there and that I should call him and he'll get there as soon as he can. So I was like, fine, just go. And I gave him a bit of an attitude. I called my mum crying and she ended up texting him like, what do you think you're doing? My mum then told his mum and his mum texted him saying, what the hell do you think you're doing? I thought I raised you better than this. He keeps telling me that I need to calm down because it's just my out of control pregnancy hormones making me go irate. So what do you think? My in-laws left me injured up a mountain. Story time. So a couple of weeks ago, I went hiking with my boyfriend, who we'll call Steve's family. So the hike was going really well. We were all having a laugh. The weather was lovely. But about halfway up the trail, there was this massive rock slide and I ended up falling down. And when I tell you, I have never been in so much pain in my life. Now, I've had my fair share of injuries before and I know what a serious injury feels like. And let me tell you, that was a serious injury that needed some help. So I'm there lying on the floor screaming in agony. But my boyfriend's family just had no concern at all. So little concern actually that his dad turned to me and was like, we're going to continue on with our hike and we'll pick you up on our way back down. I was begging them not to leave me. And I lay there for hours, no phone service, no one, and there was no one else on the trail that day. So maybe like 3-4 hours passed, still no sign of Steve or his family, but the forest service team did end up finding me. He loaded me into his car and got me down the mountain. He then called my parents for me to let them know what was going on. So we left a little note on Steve's car to let him know that I'd been taken away, and the forest service guy as well stayed too. The whole way to the hospital, I was just sobbing. I was in so much pain, but also at the fact that I had just been left on a mountain. And I got an x-ray. It turns out that I'd broken my foot and ankle in 3 places. So I went in for immediate surgery. I spent 2 days in the hospital and they didn't check on me once. So I saw on social media all of their posts from the top of the mountain saying how much of a fun day they had all had together. Throughout this, I kind of worked out that maybe I didn't want to be with Steve anymore. And I'm not proud of this move, but I broke up with him via text saying I didn't want to be with him anymore. After a flood of messages, I just blocked them all. But that didn't stop them. We started to get notes taped to our front door, our cars, they were left at school for me, at my mum and dad's office. And then yesterday, Steve had the nerve to turn up at my house. I opened the door and he stood there looking like a little sheep. And he asks if his family could take me to dinner for a sorry for what happened. He then said that he didn't think what his family had done was wrong. He said, but he still loved me and he wanted to clear the air between me and his family. So I told them like, no, we're not going for dinner together. Because, you know, last time you took me somewhere, I got hurt and you left me on a mountain. Then I shut the door and I said nothing else. So now I'm wondering, should I have given them the opportunity to apologise? And I do kind of feel bad for slamming the door in Steve's face. So what do you think I should have done? My boyfriend left me on the side of the road and I deserved it. Story time. My unreal boyfriend decided to treat us both to dinner. We were having such a good time, laughing, talking. We finished up our meal and we headed home. About halfway home, I asked if we could stop somewhere and get some dessert. And he says something along the lines of, haha, didn't we just eat? And then he keeps driving. Then me, being so stupid and selfish, pushes him and is like, come on, let's do it. I really just want something sweet. He replies and is like, we have ice cream at home. And I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And this boy is being very patient, more patient than I probably deserved, but he was firm and kept saying no. So eventually I stop and I give up. But then I see a fast food restaurant coming up and I jokingly just pull the wheel. And apparently I pulled a little bit harder than I thought I had. We actually ended up swerving quite badly and hit another car, only very lightly though. And to make things worse, he literally just bought this car like 2 weeks ago. So the other driver motions for us to pull over. Both drivers get out and the other driver starts cussing at my boyfriend, saying some horrible things. There was barely any damage to both cars, only like the tiniest little scratch on our bumper. They didn't even exchange any information, that was how minor it was. So whilst he is being yelled at, I just stayed in the car and let him be punished for something that I did. When he gets back into the car, he starts to drive so carefully. He's gripping the steering wheel so tight, so hard that the veins in its arms were popping out. His entire face has gone red and he hasn't said a single word to me. And I felt so awkward, so I decided to break the silence. And to be fair, I probably could have picked something better to say, because I just said, well, that could have gone a lot worse. And at that moment, he stomps on the brakes and tells me to get out of his car. I've never felt scared of my boyfriend before, but in that moment, oh my God, he sounded so angry, I was terrified. It looked like he was struggling not to hurt me. So of course I got out and he sped off. At this point it started to get really dark and I was in a stretch of woods. It took me almost an hour to get home, and when I did, him and all of his stuff was gone. I literally feel so awful. I can't even apologise because he isn't even responding to my texts. We had fights before about my childish quirks and how they can go a little bit too far sometimes. Now I just don't have a boyfriend anymore because of it. I've been getting texts from our friends like, what the hell do you even think you were doing? That was so dangerous. So I assume he's told them what's happened. And now everyone is mad at me, so how can I fix this?